Alright guys, so what do we have here? It's a Keihin 36 mil carb. It's out of a 2016 Husqvarna TE250. You'll find this carb on many different KTM models. I know Yamaha uses them, etc. So this is going to be, if you have any Keihin PWK generation carb, this is pretty much going to be the same. So yeah, let's get on with it. Do a full rebuild here, including the jet block. We're going to take that off, replace the O-ring, which I'll explain later was definitely a process to actually get done. I could not find the parts in any rebuild kit, so I'll try to get you guys a part number or something. So yeah, here we go. First things first, as you can see, I'm actually missing the slide with the needle and the needle clip. I left all of that on the actual dirt bike. My bike's a 2016 Husqvarna TE250, so it was pretty tight just getting this guy out at all, and I just wanted to leave this throttle slide, needle, and everything on the bike so I can do a separate video explaining the clip position, etc. When matching with jets, which again we'll get into. Yeah, so you can see here I left these are the screws that actually hold that top plate on. Fastens your throttle slide down. Oops. So this guy is going to be a small little Allen. I believe it's like I want to say a 4 mil, maybe a 5 mil Allen on my bike. So I assume that's going to be on most of the Husqvarna and KTM models with the, again, Keihin PWK Series. So this little magnetic tray here, let's set those aside. When you're removing the carb from the bike, you're going to want to drain whatever fuel's left in here. So most of these are going to have it's like a drain plug, as you can see. It's actually a seal goes around here. I don't know if you can see that, but yeah. So that's going to seal the fuel in. These holes here, so when you crack this loose and let it down, it'll actually drain out everything that's in the float bowl. So crack this guy first to make sure the carb's empty. So next we're going to remove the float bowl. These screws, they always get stripped out, especially if your carb has been opened up before. I bought my bike used, so these are all scuffed up, and I will say I did take this carb apart before the filming of this, but I figured I'd throw it back together and try to do an instructional video because I couldn't find much information on YouTube. So these are going to be a pain to get out. If you have a little impact screwdriver, that might be good. I don't know if an actual impact gun is going to do the job, but might as well give it a shot. We'll be replacing these four screws here. Fasten the float ball on. Again, a cross pattern. Definitely don't want to warp any of these parts. The best thing I can say for these, put a lot of downward pressure on the screws and hopefully you will not strip them. But again, no big deal if you do. You can always take a needle nose pliers and grab this screw on the sides and break it free. So Alright, get the float bowl removed. Clean this guy out. There's going to be some sediment and crud in there 90% of the time, so now's the time. You know, I actually cleaned all these parts already, and it's still, you can see the traces of black residue on there. I'm going to clean that again. Alright, so next up, we'll deal with our float. You can see clearly the float needle's not stuck. It's operating smoothly from, you know, top stop to bottom. Typically, these are going to be held in with a little pin. It's actually poking out on this side, because again, I already took everything apart, but kind of get some kind of right angle tool or something. Paper clip would probably work. Just push this pin out. You can see, here it is. Tiny little guy, don't lose that. Alright. With any luck, our float will come right out. Be super gentle taking the float out. What determines the floats, if you've ever heard of someone mentioning float height or adjusting their float, a lot of these carbs, it's just a thin, right here, thin metal tab holding this float needle into a specific position. So if you really yank on this float trying to take it out and bend that tab, that will affect your overall float position, and I promise your bike will not be running well. So be super careful with this. We are going to reuse the float. You can shake it around, make sure there's no liquid in there, which would mean there's a hole somewhere in the float. It's collecting liquid, obviously not a good thing. You need this to be sealed and empty. So we will replace the needle, but we're going to reuse these pads. This is all one piece, but we're going to reuse that if it seems to be okay, which it does. I'll leave the needle on for now. Let's get it right here. Alright, next I'd like to do my air screw. So I actually have, not sure how I feel about the hand control air screw, but yeah, typically it's going to be a little flathead guy. It's a screw, spring on it. Pull it right out and show you. Don't lose the spring, keep it in the same orientation. I might replace this with a stock flathead style air screw, to be honest, but we'll see. Choke can come out. I'm forgetting what open wrench size this was. I put a thin open wrench on this guy. I think 12, 13, 14, something around there. So I've already broken it free, took a little pop, but then you can should be able to just unscrew with your fingers. Here we go, choke. Make sure that's cleaned up. And we're breaking it down. So next up, we're going to do our main jet. So it's this little hex copper guy, and these get clogged up all the time. In fact, this is 90% of the reason why I'm rebuilding at this current moment, besides the float bowl seal, which usually will ride here or in this groove, was failing, and the jet block seal was failing, which we'll get to next. To take out this main jet here, let's see what size. So it's going to be a 6 mil Allen, or I'm sorry, 6 mil 6-point socket. So that's going to be pretty standard. Usually these are a little tight at first, so you want to just pop it free with a little 1/4-inch wrench. That guy comes right out. So we have a 172, and I'm up in Colorado in the wintertime, so that is not the right jet for what we want, which again we'll get into, but I'll save it for now. It was filthy. This was completely plugged, so my bike was absolutely not running at this point. Thank God we're doing a rebuild. Towels can that guy down. Up in here, I don't know if you can see, in this hole, we're going to do the pilot jet. We're going to remove that guy, so that will be a flat head type jet. So I'm going to reach in there. So basically just get a small flat head that easily clears the walls of this cylinder here. Slowly rotate it until it locks into place. You'll feel it, and put some downward pressure, and there we go. Now my screwdriver's a bit bent, so usually it won't be flopping all around. So that feels about loose to me. There we go. Got our pilot jet out. This thing is, I've already cleaned it. It is corroded beyond corroded, so another source of issues here. What do we have in here? Looks like a 38. So again, wrong jet for what I'm trying to do. Alright, then we got this little guy right here. Take a flathead, be careful, and with any luck, come right out like mine. This guy actually looks clean. I did not clean this initially, so it's been totally fine, and I'm just going to run this as is. Next, the jet block. So, if any of you have looked into the actual KTM carb diagrams, let's say you're trying to order a rebuild kit or specific parts, this jet block does not show up as an individual part for whatever reason. So this is the stripped body of the carb according to the diagrams, as we have it right now. However, there are some safety Torx bits here, and this center piece, known as the jet block, actually can be removed. Let me go ahead and do that. These are going to be a little tight. Cannot recommend this little Easy Red 1/4-inch wrench enough. And so the bit I'm using for this is a TH20. TH20. So that seems to fit perfectly. Pull the screws up. Alright, so normally this will be pretty stuck on here. There's an O-ring actually meeting between this jet block that we're about to remove and the body of the carburetor. So you'll want to give it a little wiggle, pop loose. Be super careful. The main reason I've been having issues with doing this rebuild is I could not locate the O-ring that's supposed to be going along here. So it goes around this top, it goes all the way down around these guys, comes around this whole piece, one solid O-ring. Couldn't find it. None of the KTM dealers had it. I couldn't find it on eBay for some reason. I ended up getting pretty lucky with a random Amazon part, to be honest with you. So I'm going to go ahead and give you that part number. So it's called a new jet block carburetor O-ring. It's for the Keihin PWK Series, and it apparently works for the 36, 38, 39, and 41 millimeter carbs. So I believe this is a 38, if I'm not mistaken. But anyways, it's one of these four, and apparently this O-ring should work, so we'll see. But it looks like it fits already, so we'll throw that in for now. The part number on Amazon is X003L09NMD. So even if you get, like, for example, I got this Moose Racing rebuild kit, which you should always get all of the parts before you start pulling the carb apart. I made that mistake already and put it back together just to not have parts stripped and laying around to forget about. Rebuild kit I'm using, again, for a 2016 Husqvarna TE250s. That will probably be the same for a lot of KTM XC and XCW two-stroke models across, give or take a few years from 2016. So that's a Moose Racing 1003-0902. So again, I'll try to put links in the description for that. But that is the rebuild kit, and it does not include the jet block O-ring, nor does any kit I've found. So make sure everything's clean here. I dipped this whole entire carb body in a chemical bath, along with a jet block, and all of the different jets. So we are going to be using new jets, so keep that in mind. Also keep in mind when you're cleaning parts, just be careful of any O-rings you're trying to save, obviously, and the seal on this float bowl bolt, drain bolt. So before we reassemble, we're going to want to print out a jet chart, so you can find these online. I'll try to link to the specific bike, the 2016 TE250, but basically make sure all the bike specs match, and the carburetor listed at the top here matches. So I guess I need to correct myself from before. This is actually a 36 mil Keihin instead of a 38. I said it was a 38, so Keihin PWK 36S AG. So that's exactly what's in my bike. It says here TE250. We're good to go. Let me get you a close-up of this actual jetting chart. Let's see at the top, TE250, Keihin PWK 36S AG. So I'm going to be in Colorado riding about in the 5,000 to 7,500 foot elevation range, so that will be your x-axis here. Follow across to the average temperature you're going to be riding in. So for me, it's going to be 42 to 60. Up at the mountains, it gets a little colder even in the summertime, so that brings us here. So what do we want? A 175 main jet and a 38 pilot jet. 38, 175. So, and then needle clip position 3, which is going to be the clip on the needle that goes inside and through of your throttle slide. Again, as I mentioned, that is actually still on the bike. So 175, 38. And here I have new jets because mine were so incredibly filled with gunk and just deteriorating. It almost seemed like a little bit of water might have gotten in the carb, and I've been pretty good about storing it, but I know at least once, as I feel like we all do, I left my fuel line on the the petcock on the on selection, and had fuel flowing through and overflowing the carb. When the float eventually got stuck, it was a mess. So, all right, got our jets here. Clean all of these surfaces. You know, the whole carb body. Clean the jets. Clean the screws. Clean the jet block. Do whatever you can. Check and clean the float. Clean the float needle here. If you do not have a replacement, which we do and most rebuild kits will include, make sure to carefully clean this guy, as well as the passage it goes through. And all of that needs to be super, super clean for everything to work together. So I think we're pretty good. I've cleaned everything as much as I can. It's not perfect, but should do fine. So, jet block over. Here we go. This was the Amazon part that I mentioned before. I gave you guys a part number, and I'll try to do a link in the description. As I said, isn't it a weird looking gasket? It's a super complicated O-ring design, so it's also really thin. My new one even has this little flaw right here, which I'm not too happy about, but that's what I could get. Try to gently, let's see, that's the wrong way. Place this guy in. This only fits one way. These little circles are offset, so barely wants to sit in there for me, which is a shame. Alright, that's just not loving it at the moment. Alright. Keep the O-ring flat, so I'll hold this guy upright. Weasel it in there. Weasel it and pray that O-ring didn't move. Again, we have our T20H screws here. Just gonna fasten this up. Make sure to tighten these evenly. I think my O-ring's set, so I'm gonna hold everything tight while I get this one screw in. Just finger tight. Stuff doesn't move. Perfect. Get her screw in here. And these bottom out nicely, these screws, bolts, whatever. Give them a little bit, you know. Not least when I took them off, but obviously you don't want to strip out a bunch of aluminum. So I'm going to take a light and inspect that O-ring. Make sure that's seated as far as I can tell. Which I think it is. So time will tell. You do have the option, if you just want to spray the carb out with carb cleaner or something and not actually take off this whole jet block, that is an option. You can try to preserve whatever seal is left. I know mine is already in pieces and certainly leaking, but as hard as it is to find the O-ring and actually get it seated perfectly when it goes back together, might be worth trying to preserve what you've got if this is really just a generally gummed up carb and a jetting situation for you. Okay, start to throw some jets back in. So let me double check my chart here. 42 to 60 degrees Fahrenheit. 50,000 or 5,000 to 7,500 feet elevation. That's what I'm looking for. So we need the 175 main jet. This guy, brand new. These jets are cheap, guys. Even if you want to stick with whatever jets you have, your bike's running well for what you use it for. The only issue is everything's just corroded and dirty. You can always get the same jets that you had, just new ones. They flow nicely and everything works as it should. So next, you look at the 6mm out. 6mm 6-point socket. And just bottom this guy out. Give it a little something, but again, you're not trying to, this thing doesn't need to be torqued to 500 foot-pounds. Alright, pilot dropped in place. I'm actually going to wipe my screw. I don't want to get any crud in the tip of that jet. And gently make sure it threads all the way in. And just snug it up. That's it. Don't go crazy. Little jet in here. It's a little guy. Try to get a close up of that. Right here. So, screw that down. Again, make sure your tools are clean for this. Make sure it's bottomed out. Tiny bit snug, that's it. Sweet, so we've got new jets, new O-ring on the jet block. We're looking good. The surface is pretty darn clean. It's good enough for what I need it for right now. Let's see what else our rebuild kit is. Alright. We're going to replace the float needle, as we talked about. Give you a quick zoom of that. So, our kit came with one. Make sure it looks like the right size before I do anything. Yep. Perfect. Got a needle replaced, perfect. Put that in the old part bin. This is going to be for our needle clip. Again, mine's on my bike, so save this. If you need a new clip, I guess. We have the float bowl O-ring. We have the top plate O-ring here where the throttle slide and top plate meet. You can see that's same shape, top of the carb. So we'll hang on to this O-ring for the, it's going to be the drain bolt O-ring. I don't know, I don't really want to replace mine. My seal actually looks totally fine, so I'll hang on to that. You guys might want that. Again, if it fits, it's an O-ring, it's going to do its job, just make sure it fits. Another little O-ring. I don't know if that's supposed to be for an air screw or not. Well, set that right here. Let's see about that. And then it looks like a little spring. It doesn't seem to apply to us. So a lot of the times, guys, don't get worried if you don't use all of the parts in these rebuild kits. A lot of the times it's just they work for so many different models. You get extra parts and it's normal. So I don't know if these are supposed to be for the throttle slide and the top plate. Seems like it. I'm going to reuse my old ones because they are Allen cap screws as opposed to Phillips head, so I'd way rather have an Allen cap screw than a Phillips head. Set those there. These are float bowl. Actually, oh nice, we got real bolts, little tiny metric, I guess 6 mil. Yep, little 6 mil head bolts with a flathead option. So again, those were stripped out on me to begin with, so super glad we have these. Yeah. Jeez. Just blowing out the needle hole here. So put our float back in. Just make sure it nicely goes in there. Put our pin back in. Sometimes these can be tough to line up. Looks like we're good to go. Make sure that stays relatively centered when you're putting everything back together, but just See, our float was operating fine when I took it apart, even though it was overflowing with gas when it was on the bike. But working smoothly with this new needle. Set that guy down. We're going to go ahead put our new O-ring gasket in the float bowl. Make sure that's seated nicely. You can use some like dielectric grease or something if you have to. These guys will actually click right into place. I don't know if you can see that. They're like little locator tabs, basically. Make sure everything looks even all around. So the bolts. You're going to snug these up. Again, bottom them out gently. Snug them up. Don't go crazy. There's just a thin O-ring, between these mating surfaces. So with these tightened up, we'll throw our drain plug in. Make sure your original seal is fine. If not, most all these kits come with an O-ring again. So. I'm forgetting exactly what size drain plug is gonna be, but looks like a 13. So snug that up, don't go crazy again. Yeah. So last but not least, air screw. Make sure we have our spring. And you're going to want to look up, depending on your tuning and where you are, whatever, look up some good baseline air screw settings so you can bottom it out and then come back. Or that's how most people will tell you, like 2 or 3 turns out, whatever, bottom it out, do that amount of turns back, and you'll be there. So I'm going to figure that out outside of this video. What I want to do for my air screw. And check. So snug this guy up again. It looks like a 12 or 13 small open wrench. Just get it bottomed out, slightly tight. Still works there, as you can see. Yeah, that's gonna be it. So thanks for watching. I'm going to do a separate video on actually figuring out jetting and tuning and whatnot, and maybe I'll feed into like a baseline air screw adjustment video at the same time. So last thing for this carb, I'm going to have to replace all these, all the vent lines and everything that were on here. Obviously clean up the throttle slide and set my needle clip position according to my jetting chart. get it back in there, and yeah, hope everything's working fine. It's all cleaned out, new jets, new seals, should be good to go. I'm also gonna eventually get into a chain replacement on that bike. Again, should be the same as like most of the KTM XCWs, XCs, etc. Even the 4-stroke bikes, a lot of it's just the same with the chain replacement, and then tire replacement, clutch bleeding and brake bleeding, and just general maintenance. So maybe oil filter cleaning tips and maintenance interval tips, etc. Important to always drain your gas every season. I could do a video on that as well. So, yep, thanks for watching. Hope this is helpful. Again, this applies to so many different Suzuki, Honda, Yamaha, KTM, Husqvarna, etc. So many different bikes use the same style Keihin PWK carburetor, so this will apply to almost any of them. So, yep, give the video a like, check out the rest. Thank you.